What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Episode 22 after Away From The Rink podcast. DJ McGrath, got my brother, my co-host, G-Bones, Giovanni Flaminio. G-Bones, how was the weekend, man? How you holding up over there?
I'm holding up, man. Good to be back, weekly again in studio with you. As always, feel I share that every time we hop on, but really means a lot. Hot as shit out there, dude.
Yeah.
We were talking before the show, too, just getting destroyed by mosquitoes in the evening. Was trying to do some stuff in the yard there late last night, and it's I don't know, I like summer, but sometimes this humidity and just the bugs are annoying as shit. But you know what, should be grateful, man. You know, we get a few nice months a year up here, so yeah, here we are.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm glad you had a good weekend. Berry Barn, man. Got to go to the Berry Barn this morning. Anyone in Saskatoon surrounding, if you haven't been to the Berry Barn, unbelievable food out there, and a nice, it's a nice drive out there, about 15, 20 minutes outside Saskatoon, and beautiful out there. Had a nice breakfast and just came back slowly and just cruised around. I know they have a nice driving range out there and that, so it was good, man, doing that stuff, and obviously getting geared up for my big Mental Health Classic hockey tournament coming up here in too quick. It's time's flying by, man.
Month away, eh?
Month away, a little less than a month. So just getting geared up for that. And yeah, man, been doing well. Obviously have my days and stuff, but things have been going good in my life. And I know before we were kind of jumping on live here, we were talking about pet peeves and stuff. And I know we kind of we'll talk briefly on this, but G-Bones, you kind of had something that happened to you. I don't know if it was today or the other day, but I'm sure a lot of people could relate with you.
Yeah, it's a big one. And I don't know, maybe I'm over the top or too sensitive. I don't know, but it's happened to me a few times this year. Just going into get gas or convenience store or whatever, and people checking their lottery tickets, man, right? And just not having that awareness when it was packed in there. One clerk, right? So just the one till going, lineup got to about 10 people, and this dude was just we're talking dozens upon dozens of lottery tickets, and the poor worker was just he didn't even know what to do, right? And people were getting flustered. I was getting flustered. And I guess, who am I to judge? But you want to be fuck, man, time and a place. Let's have some awareness here. Maybe come in late night and check that shit. Yeah. I don't know. Am I over the top with that, dude?
I want to ask you, I'm glad you calmed it down, because I know you back in the day, you probably would have said something.
Yeah, even subtly, maybe not snapped, but might have walked out and just been hey, man, that's unacceptable, But I feel bad almost because he was, I don't know, mid-50s, let's say, and just going about his day. To him, it probably wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. But I get it, man. Yeah. Long lineup, people have stuff to do, and a guy's holding up the line. I'm in the same boat as you. But again, we don't know, there's always something that could be a lot worse, but it's that subtle situation where it's get me the fuck out of there. Come on, buddy. I get it, man.
Okay.
I get it. I think I'm on your side too, but you were talking about my pet peeve. Hearing people chewing food.
Oh, fuck.
I ain't no saint by all means. Just get that started. I ain't perfect with eating, but man, hearing people chew their food, I know shut your mouth when you're chewing your food, but hearing people chewing the food, it's a big pet peeve of mine. I know when I said that to you, you kind of my girlfriend gets mad at you for chewing your food.
Oh yeah, my partner's on me steady for it, dude. And I don't and now it's back to me wanting the guy in the store to have awareness. Yeah. I don't really have the awareness around that, especially if it's a good meal or whatever. Yeah. And she'll just she's not harsh about it, she's direct. She's hey, man, we can't converse while you're eating, for one, and just can you chew with your mouth closed? So I initially, when she'd call me out on it, I'd maybe again take it a little bit personal mode. But now it's you know what, I just try to be mindful about it. But yeah, it's just interesting how people tick in different ways, right?
Can I ask you a question? Because I know you are kind of a little louder eater. Do you hear yourself chew, or is it silent and you don't know you're doing it?
Yeah, I don't unless I go into the meal and okay, I'm gonna focus on just taking it easy here. I probably do chew a little bit too loud, and that's just again, just that awareness and mindfulness. For sure. Of take your time, man, because I'm always probably in too much of a hurry, even when eating, and so I think it does stem from that. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like those little pet peeves, but like
Yeah.
now thinking about it right now that we're talking about it, like so much worse things that could happen, you know?
Yeah.
But it's those little things that just fire up so much. But if any of you guys out there have a pet peeve that you want to share, send us an email because we obviously want to hear that. But super excited about this next guest.
Yeah.
I think it's very important bringing on current athletes. And how I met this guy just before I get started here, how I heard about Clarke, obviously plays for the PA Raiders, but the vulnerability he did on Facebook and how he needed more support through his community and for working out and being an athlete in general and trying to get that next step. And we're big about vulnerability, right? We're big about guys speaking up and being vulnerable. And this is exactly why. And I think he should have a voice. He should have, a platform to start sharing his story. So that's why we're here. So today's guest has a story that goes far beyond hockey. At just 18 years old, Hubert Clarke has already faced more adversity than most people experience in a lifetime. Growing up in Norway House Cree Nation in Northern Manitoba, hockey wasn't just a game. It became a dream, a purpose, and a path moving forward. After losing his father to alcohol addiction at 14 years old, Hubert made an incredibly courageous decision. Just 1 week later, he left home and moved to Winnipeg to chase the dream that so many young Indigenous athletes share, playing in the NHL. But this conversation isn't about only hockey. It's about grief, resilience, identity, and proving that your circumstances don't define your future. Hubert is using his journey to inspire the next generation and show Indigenous youth that no matter where you come from, anything is possible. Hubert, man, how we like to start this podcast, buddy. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great. Bit hot out here, but I'm doing wonderful.
Yeah, you said you're in Kelowna, man. That's pretty cool. Do you want to touch? You kind of said you're skating with a whole bunch of pros out there. Do you kind of want to give us a little background how you started going to Kelowna? Because you're obviously not born and raised there. So how is it in Kelowna? How did everything start for you, and how is it skating with a whole bunch of pros?
Well, originally how I kind of got here in the first place was starting off by playing at NAX. So that would have been 3 years ago now. So I played NAX. I had a billet brother, and his name is Blaise Boucher, and so obviously the Boucher family. And yeah, me and him just became such a really good really good friends. So yeah, ever since we've been in touch. I've been in touch with his family, and we just became so close. And his family is they're great people. Everyone that's involved with them is they all help me out in some way with the post I made there. They helped me out with the support I needed. But no, that's kind of the way I got to Kelowna. And yeah, no, that's really all I have to tell you about Kelowna.
Yeah, that's super cool. I know all these NHLer superstars go out there to train, and super cool. Hey, you probably think your old 13-year-old self, you'd be in this position now. That's about putting your head down and getting to work. But you talked about that Facebook post, and I think we should talk about this because I think it's going to help out a lot of athletes. A lot of athletes get into those funks, maybe don't have that support, Hubert. But talk to me about that leading up to it. What was it? Because that's some pretty vulnerable stuff, especially coming from an 18-year-old kid. Yep. I know Gio and myself, when we were your age, not a fucking chance. Nope. We'd be on the internet being vulnerable about that stuff. But I think you open up a lot of doors for athletes, open up a lot of doors for certain situations like this. So do you mind sharing and kind of taking it back to that moment and why you did that?
Yeah, no, I definitely I just have so many great people around me, in my corner, willing to help me out. And, it wasn't only my decision to do that. It was my whole family. I have a really tight knit family, and I have a lot of close friends, a lot of close buddies, that grew up in the reserve that are still there, that kind of had the same struggle I did, but, obviously they didn't make it to the level that I'm at because of the lack of struggle. You know what I mean? The lack of support, sorry. So, they just kind of said, whatever you need to do, man, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to come up with. So, my buddies and my family, they kind of just said, yeah, let's write something up, and, let's not make it like we're pointing any fingers at anybody, because that's not what you want. You want to make it as respectful as possible, especially coming from me. because the way people view me as, a role model, and you don't want anybody to I don't want to ruin that reputation,
Mhm.
because, I want to be that role model for every kid out there. And, it definitely, it took a lot to post it. But, it worked out though. I got way more support than I needed. And, all the, just after that, I finally realized that how much people, look up to me, and, cheer for me, and look out for me. So, that obviously helped me out a lot, mentally. And, it's just so much like love and support from everybody. It means so much.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Hubert. And again, like DJ said, the vulnerability is super commendable, man. And I wouldn't have been able to do that as a teenager. And you touched on that role model piece as well, dude. Like, congrats on like recognizing that that's what you literally already are, man. Because again, I was playing top level junior A hockey at 18, and I don't remember thinking like that was an obligation for me to be a role model necessarily, right? It was more about Geo and how I could benefit. But I want to go back, man. You touched on the reservation side of it. Like, I want to go back to your upbringing, and just if you're open to it, man, just talking about some of the stuff that you struggled with, the adversities. With my work, I've been afforded the chance to go to a couple reservations in Saskatchewan, and you see the good and the bad. It's kind of been my experience. What was it like for you growing up there, man? And I know DJ touched on your father in the intro. Like, when did it get really hard for you, man, beyond just losing your father, where you recognized maybe you needed to to change it up?
Yeah, no, I pretty much my whole life, my dad was, always kind of addicted to alcohol, drugs as well. I didn't mention that, but he's addicted to drugs and alcohol. And, it was my whole life. My mom, my pretty much my whole family, they drink here and there. We everyone learned a lesson from my father. From losing him, it sucked for everybody, not include like not only me, not only for, his kids and, his wife. It sucked for everybody. So, everyone learned a lesson. Obviously, there's always going to be someone in the family that has addiction, and it's so unfortunate. I have one of my aunts are still in addiction, battling addiction, but, we're trying to help her get out of it. And but, it's always going to be around. But, you just hope that, it goes away, but, it never will, because of, that's just in the reserve. It's just always there. But, I realized, that I need to really get out of the reserve, I guess I want to say, when my father passed away. I always said to myself when I was younger, like, man, I want to live in the big cities. But that wasn't because I wanted to play hockey. That just was because I wanted to live in the big cities, because I thought it was cool. So, I would go to Winnipeg. That's the only place I'd really go, because that's the closest to us. It's about 9 hours away from the reserve. So, I would go to Winnipeg and, say to myself, I want to live here one day. I want to move here because it's a big, nice city. And then obviously my father passed away August. It was like August 10th he passed away. And then, yeah, I moved away about a week later. And yeah, no, that's kind of when, I kind of flipped the switch on, and, told myself that I needed to kind of do this. And, I wanted to try and make a life out of this. Obviously, starting a little bit late than others, because that would have been my second year bantam. So that would have been my draft year to the Western League. And yeah, I went to Winnipeg, tried out for the Winnipeg Thrashers U15, and I ended up making it. And that year, the Thrashers had three different teams. It was all AAA though. We all played each other. We all whatever. And then, yeah, it was my first year of hockey. After, also forgot to mention, after switching from goalie to player.
Wow.
And yeah, I was one of the only two people out of all 60 players to get drafted to the Western League after 1 year of playing player. So, that's once that happened, that's when I realized I kind of had something in me to, go even further than I already was. And, whenever that kind of stuff happens, you think you're the coolest kid on the block. I thought I was once the coolest kid on the block, getting drafted to the Western League. There's me and my cousin Hayden Papanicus. He also plays in Kelowna. He's from the reserve, so there's only two of us. And yeah, that's kind of when I realized that, I had something in me to do something great, I guess. So
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Hubert.
Yeah.
That's really inspiring and how you got where you are. I kind of want to go back a bit, and obviously, sorry to hear about your passing of your father. Who was it for you? Was it besides family members? Obviously, the cliche thing is having your mom and dad and being that inspiration. But for you, Hubert, who was that someone that grabbed you and just like, hey, buddy, like helped you out? Because obviously it could have went on one of two ways for you, right? You lost your father, you're on the res. You could have went that other way, right? Threw in the towel and went and that drug and alcohol journey, but you didn't, man. What was it for you that made you stay, stay on that good even kill and being where you are today?
yeah, no. To be honest, I've never done it in my life. I've never
Yeah.
smoked. I've never drank ever in my life. I've never touched. Obviously, I've touched it, but I've never actually drank it in my. It's never been in my system. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I kind of just always had a mentality of, I'm not really ever going to drink. I always say to kind of mess around. The only way I'm going to drink is if I win the Stanley Cup, and it will be out of the Stanley Cup. So that's the only way I'll drink. And, I'm just never going to smoke. I'm never going to do any of that kind of stuff because, what's the point, right? But the guy, to be honest, the guy that really, grabbed me and kind of got me on the right path, honestly, was probably his name is Jesse Dudas. I'm not sure if you guys know who that is, but he's from out in Alberta. He's an Indigenous hockey player as well. He was really good. He had a really successful career over in Europe. Yeah, he was the guy that invited me to NAX. Kind of the first 2 years I played, obviously U15 AAA in Winnipeg, and then I got cut from U18 AAA in Manitoba. So I played U17, and then my second year midget, I got invited to NAX. So that's when I met Jesse Dudas. He was playing with my reserve at a NAV tournament, and I ended up meeting him there. And he said you could come live in Edmonton, and you can play hockey. And at the time, I knew what NAX was. I knew that they were the best prep school in Canada at the time. So I was like, oh wow, like this is going like many steps forward than I thought, like way quicker than I thought. So once I kind of got the call from Jesse Dudas about going to NAX, I didn't really second think it. I kind of just said yes, and I told my mom I'm going, and we need to find a way to get $24,000 to
Mm-hmm.
Edmonton.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, no, I went there, and I worked out every day, and then I played hockey every single day, played games on weekends, and that's kind of where I jumped up to a new level. And then obviously I had 10 goals, 30 assists, 40 points, led all defensemen in points that year. And then, yeah, we went into playoffs, obviously lost semifinals, but, that's kind of the way it goes sometimes. But, and then after that year was over, I ended up talking to 24 Division I teams, and then obviously committing to Western Michigan. And then obviously, yeah, ever since I just kind of jumped to a new level every single year, and obviously hoping to do that again this year.
Yeah, awesome, man. And, thanks for breaking down the journey a bit. That's kind of where I wanted to keep going because I knew you'd committed to Western Mich and, CCHA. That's the league I played in down there with Ferris, and great hockey, some of the best hockey I've ever played. So what does that look like for you, though? Because I know you're going back to PA in the fall here for your 19-year-old season. So what does it look like? I mean, obviously you're hoping to probably get drafted to the show, but are you thinking another year major junior and then maybe head down south to play Div 1, or are you just kind of playing it by ear at this point, man?
Yeah, no, I think the plan is to play this year, my 19-year-old year in the Western League, one more year. Obviously, hopefully have another successful year. Obviously, losing the finals to Everett. Obviously, hoping for another successful year like that, but obviously a better ending. But yeah, no, the plan is to go my 20-year-old year, and obviously hopefully only stay there for 2 years, and then obviously move on to pro. Hopefully, that's the plan that me and Western have. Obviously, in line, they only expect me to be there for 2 years and then move on to pro. Just the way I've been, stepping and getting better every single year, kind of the development, how it's been, and that's what they expect, and obviously that's what I expect out of myself as well. But obviously, but yeah, no, that's really all I have for the next 2 years.
Yeah, super cool, Hubert. I want to go back to NAX. Obviously, when me and Gio played, like there was no academies, it was just A hockey, then double A, then triple A hockey, right? How was your experiences there? I know obviously you knew the NAX and obviously the best school or academy in Canada. How was your experiences? Did you have any adversities going down there? And talk to me about moving away from home. Like, did you have any homesickness or was it kind of one of those things? Because you were mentioning, I want to move away from home. That's the biggest thing is get away from the res. Did you have any homesickness or any of that?
No, to be honest with you guys, no, I never really get homesick.
Yeah.
I'm always having fun, especially at NAX. When I was living in Edmonton, I had obviously a billet brother. He was a native kid as well. So, we already had that connection. We already knew how to talk to each other. We knew we could tease each other and, we could mess around. So, that obviously helps so much moving that far away from home, not seeing my mom, seeing my family once a year, well, twice a year that year. It could be tough for many kids. There was another native kid there that was playing on a different team. Obviously, I'm not going to mention his name, but he left NAX to go back home because he got homesick, and obviously, I'm not sure what else he was going through, but that's not my business to deal with. But yeah, there was there was only four native kids there, and obviously me and my billet brother and another kid, and that fourth kid, he ended up obviously unfortunately leaving back to home. He got homesick, and it obviously sucks to see that because obviously we were all friends. We all found out that we were native, and we all wanted to keep that connection between all four of us, and keep a relationship there. But it's I never really get homesick. That's like all there is to it. I just never get homesick. I'm always having fun. I enjoy my life, and there's nothing really I complain about. I never really, I never get depressed really. Not even really. I just never do. I never get, obviously you have those bad days, but that's just like everybody. Everyone's gonna have a bad day, but I never really I never dealt with depression just yet. And no, life is great.
Yeah, and I think it's huge because of obviously a different story, right? You're in a childhood. Obviously, you've been through some shit. You've seen some stuff, and this is kind of you pursuing your dream, right? So you're out in Kelowna, you're playing all this good hockey, NAX, playing for the Raiders and stuff. I think it's good because I think when you're playing hockey and you're moving up levels, I think you're right. You're where you need to be, right? And end of the day, man, you're inspiring kids. You're inspiring First Nation kids, athletes in general, because
Yep.
you're making a big point that if you just put your mind to work and forget about the outsiders, all that wanted stuff, and I think good things happen to good people and the way you work hard. But we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break with Hubert Clarke on After Away from the Rink podcast.
This episode is proudly supported by Par Auto Body and the ownership group of Chelsea, Braden, Shane, and David. For years, Par Auto Body has built a reputation in Saskatoon for quality workmanship, outstanding customer service, and doing things the right way. Their team takes tremendous pride in helping people through what is often a stressful situation and getting them back on the road with confidence. What makes this partnership especially meaningful to us is the alignment of values. The team at Par Auto Body has always believed in giving back, supporting their community, and investing in people. Those are the same principles that drive what we're building here at Away from the Rink. Our mission is about more than sports. It's about mental health, resilience, personal growth, and creating conversations that help people navigate life's challenges both on and off the ice. To the entire team at Par Auto Body, thank you for believing in our vision and for helping us continue these important conversations throughout our community and beyond. Welcome back, episode 22, After Away from the Rink podcast. We have our guest on today, Hubert Clarke. Really incredible first half of the show, discussing a little bit about Hubert's journey to where he's at now, some of the adversities he's faced, some of the amazing support he's had along the way, and kind of what he hopes the next several years here look like with his hockey career and personal life. So we're going to jump right back in, Hubert. I wanted to ask you, man, because I'm always astonished by some of our guests. They come on here, they're locked in. I mean, you're 18 years old, man. You talk about just no issues with depression, engaged, goal focused. How does that happen, man? Is it partly because of what you saw growing up and you wanted to go in a different direction? Is it because of the support group you've already mentioned? But how are you so locked in, man, and able to overcome these pressures. I mean, you're dealing with Div 1 stuff, major junior hockey, title runs in the WHL, aspirations to play in the show. How do you seem so calm and collected through all that, man?
No, I think it's just the way my mind is. I think I'm just so mentally tough. I obviously losing my father at a young age. That kind of changes you a lot in many many ways. I obviously, like I said, moving away from home at one week after you lose your father is not a very easy thing to do. So that makes you so mentally tough. Grinding your grinding your freaking life away the whole season, thinking about your losing your father literally the summer before, and then having to go home to not seeing your father. You know what I mean? Just the thought of all that kind of stuff, and it's not going to change. It's going to be like that for the rest of my life. So, I think I'm just so locked in, like tunnel vision. So I think that's really what has helped me was my father's death. Obviously, that doesn't sound very good to say. Obviously, it's not going to sound the nicest thing to say. It's not the nicest thing to say, obviously, but it's. I think losing my father is a big reason why I'm here today. I think is the best, really the best and only way to say it.
And I think that's, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I
Yeah.
think that's a great thing to have, right? Because you could have went on one of both different ways. You could have fucking chucked in the towel, see you later career, and stayed in reserve. But no, you used it as a positive, and you're doing that. I want to ask you about pressures, man. I think you handle pressures very well, but obviously there's a lot of eyes on you, man. You say there's a lot of kids looking up to you, and you know that. You're not only doing this for yourself, but you're showing kids that there is a way out, and chase your dream, right? So like, how do you deal with the pressures, the unwanted pressures, the outsiders, having to play good every night, you have to obviously be a good role model. Like, what do you do to stay positive and stay in that tunnel vision?
To be honest, it's really just my work ethic. To be honest, it's the work in the gym. It's the work away from all the eyes and all the thousands of people that look up to me. It's just the work away from really all the company and all that. So, I it's really it's I've really learned how to deal with pressure, which is a good thing. You know, it's not really that I go into games, oh my, there's thousands of people watching me tonight and expecting me to play so good. It's not. I just go into it. Okay, it's another game. It's yeah. There's people watching. I know there's always people watching. I understand that now. That there's always going to be people watching, and I you just have to play consistently good, and that's really what the thought I have is, that there's always going to be people watching, and it's the work you put away from all the thousands of eyes that look at you while you're performing in a thousand people.
Yeah, I think that's very important. What's something that you could say to an athlete right now, maybe going through it right now?
Man, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. There's always going to be good. There's it's not always going to be bad. It's really only up to you to get yourself out of it. No one's going to really be able to help you. You're going to be able to speak. There's always going to be someone there to help you. There's always someone there. And that's why I say that is because some people think that there's nobody there to help them, and there's no support there. There's always going to be support there. There's always someone there to help you. If it's a friend, a family member, it's maybe even a girlfriend if you trust her enough. There's always going to be someone there. And yeah, like I said, going back to the start, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So that's really all there is to say to it, is that there's always going to be a light.
Yeah, that's inspiring stuff, man. 18 years old saying that, that there is help out there. Because, man, Hubes, you probably heard it back in the day, there was none of this stuff. It was suck it up. And then we don't blame our parents, but they got taught that. And that was like that when we were playing junior, right? There was none of this stuff going on. So hearing that from you, I think that's going to help out a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially kids, right, G?
Yeah, 100%. And one big takeaway from what you said there, like three things that I try to emulate is, the work ethic, consistency, and discipline. You touched on all three of those. And I think personally, yeah, it is our responsibility to do those things. But I want to go back to the PA or the Raider hockey culture real quick. I know your coach. Ryan McDonald. Have to give him a shout out here. But Prince Albert's been very successful on the ice. But can you talk about the hockey culture a little bit? Because DJ and I are big on like the teammate situation with players. And like I know you're locked in and maybe haven't had as much struggles as some guys you see or play with. But how important is the hockey culture, man, on any given team and the teammates you play with to pick each other up? Can you speak on that, man?
Yeah, going back to my first year junior when I was in North American League in Minot, North Dakota. That my first year, that wasn't a very good year. I obviously had struggles first year junior. The way it usually is. You're not going to be very good your first year junior. It's very odd that happens, but I was playing 6 minutes a night. Wasn't really liking the head coach. He was old fashioned. But I got along with it. I had to, I just about, threw the towel in for the North American League and went to the MJHL. But I didn't. We were really solid team that year, but the guys on the team weren't the guys that I wanted to be around. They didn't help with the struggles at all. They made them worse, if anything. But I just put my head down and put extra work in, and there's always good and bad. So that's kind of what I also thought of, was there's always good and bad. So I finished a year there, and yeah, I mean, obviously then going back to this past season in Prince Albert, it was a whole different story. The guys, every single guy on the team was great. Leadership, 20-year-olds, they were wonderful guys. Like, I'm gonna be friends with those guys for the rest of my life, probably.
Yeah.
Obviously having a freaking super team as well. Like we have probably two guys that are going to play in the NHL this year. So that's pretty hard to do in the Western League, but it's just like, even the coaching staff was wonderful. Obviously being in and out of the lineup, obviously playing 40 games out of 60 something, 68 or something like that. My head coach, Ryan McDonald, and Connor Yanni and Cole Bell, they all spoke to me probably every second day, kind of how I'm doing and kind of how I'm dealing with all, being scratched in and out of the lineup. And, they helped me understand that, it's that I'm on such a good team, and we did something like great there. Obviously losing the finals wasn't the way we wanted to end, but doing something great, for in such a small town in Prince Albert, northern Saskatchewan, like, and obviously for me, a northern Manitoba kid, Indigenous, doing something great, for not only for myself but for the kids, obviously, because it's I'm not only doing it for myself, I like to do it for everyone else, all the Indigenous kids that look up to me. But yeah, no, there's nothing but great things to say about Prince Albert, and uh, I don't know if you guys ever heard many people say that Prince Albert's not a good place to live in, but it's honestly not too bad. I actually didn't find Prince Albert such a bad place to live in, but
Gio's from there.
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's honestly not a good. It's honestly not a bad spot. Obviously, because I'm so used to like small towns, right? I grew up in a small town for the first 14 years of my life. I lived in big cities for the past 3 years, well, 4 years now. So, I think that's why I didn't mind it, was because of, I'm used to small towns, and just all about that stuff. But yeah, nothing but great things to say about Prince Albert last year.
And that's coming from a champion, right? Like,
Yeah.
obviously lost in the finals, but having that year last year. But thank you for sharing about that teammates.
Yeah.
Back and you had that shitty experience when you were struggling, you didn't have anybody, and you weren't getting along with your coaches. And I know a lot of guys struggle at. I struggled with that, being the top end midget AAA kid and then going to Everett and being a fifth liner. I'll never forget, day of the game, we would find out who's playing or not. We had a room, and I walked in there. If you had a red jersey in your stall, you weren't playing.
Yeah.
It's mind fucks like that, right? And I remember fighting guys in practice to stay in the lineup and stuff. Like, it's hard. And having teammates, Hubert, thank you so much for sharing that. And obviously having the right coaches
Yep.
and having that had open conversations and why you're not playing. And I think that's important because none of that shit was going on when we were playing. You're healthy scratched. We're coming up with a million reasons why we're healthy scratched, and ultimately we suck and we want to throw in the towel, right? It's all that, but having open conversations, and that's why you guys went as far as you did, because you have the coaching staff and teammates that have your back, right? You probably had 25 brothers, and you said you're going to be having these relationships with these guys long over past that you're playing hockey with them right now. Yeah. So it's huge, right, G? Like, hey, what he just said, having teammates, right? He didn't like it when he was doing an NAX, and then he goes, in Minot, and then goes out to PA, and having that close-knit family, being teammates, and having 3 coaches that care about him as a person.
Yeah, and you just said it too, man. And then it actually translate onto the ice. Translate onto the ice the success you have as a team, and and it's kind of crazy. And yeah, thanks for the kind words about my hometown, man. Great place to grow up, not gonna lie. And just I think the big thing is just incredible hockey community, right? Always has been, and the Raiders are like the pride and joy of the community. So to see you guys bring some incredible success there is great for the community. But yeah, man, I just wanted to ask you, I guess, kind of my last question, probably. Like, I know we briefly touched on like what's ahead. I mean, what you mentioned the 2 years down at Western Michigan, but I mean, just like maybe away from the rink, what do you touched on the role model thing? You're already recognizing at 18 that you're a role model, but is there anything you want to do away from the game or maybe beyond hockey down the road that you see yourself doing to help influence lives and be that role model you talked about, man?
Yeah, no, definitely. You look at guys like Keyshawn, what he does. He goes around speaking, and just like Ethan Bear, kind of same thing. They do the same thing. Going around speaking from what they've went through, and all their perseverances. I kind of want to do that later on in the future, and I want to be able to go back to my reserve one day and be the guy that everyone says hi to and says you're doing a great job and thanks for doing what you're doing. And I already get that a little bit, but I would like to go back one day and finally get all the compliments from all the people saying that you're doing such a great job with dealing with all the pressure and all that stuff. But I actually have a story. A kid, I got a so there was, where this is, Geo, Carleton. A
Yep.
kid graduated from Carleton High School this past year, so it would have been a couple of weeks ago now. He graduated, and his speech was he was thanking me for being such a good role model in Prince Albert, and that I saved his life, for being not, for going out and saying hi to everybody and taking time out of my day to speak to people I don't even know. And I guess he was maybe one of the kids, and I don't even know that. And that was his speech on the stage, was just thanking me, and that I saved his life. And that is the kind of stuff that I do. That's the reason why I do it, and that's why I want to do it, is to save people's lives, and show people that there's that Indigenous people could do great things, and that there's no differences between the different races. And being Indigenous, it's really just the lack of work that the Indigenous people put in towards their dreams. They always throw the towel in, and no offense to any of the other guys that did that, but I'm just speaking the truth. And that's not something that I grew up to be. I always want to do better, and I always want to do great things. And that's kind of what I've been working towards every single day, and that's what I will continue to work towards.
Yeah, and that's awesome, Hubes. And coming from Gio and myself, whatever you take out of this from us, like, we've been there, man. And what keeps me and Gio sober is by sharing our past. And that's what helps. And I think that's a big, powerful thing nowadays, is hearing guys who have been there, and you being a WHL player, and you being from the reservation, and you having that inspiration, and you having that bravery to help kids by using your past. Yeah. That saved my life, man, is doing and speaking my story, because I didn't do counseling and rehab. I'm not against that, but I didn't know any knowledge. Being in Kindersley, Saskatchewan, I didn't know any of that. But me sharing my story and people reaching out, hey, you saved my son's life for saying what you said, it's a good feeling. And from what you just shared of having that kid reach out to you and saying that you saved his life just by being yourself, right? You're going out of your way, and there's not many hockey players. I know they are, but we need every hockey player because you guys have eyes on you. You're good role models, but away from the game, you're going to help out so many kids. So thank you from me and Gio for doing what you're doing, because we need more of that, because we could tell you there's a lot of athletes struggling, especially kids, on the pressure of hockey, on being too scared to speak up, of not having mom and dad and all that. So thank you so much for sharing that. I got one last question for you, Hubert. I know it helps out a lot of athletes and people who do struggle. I want you to go back into a time that you were struggling. Maybe you're 12, 13 years old. Maybe you're still on the reservation, or maybe a time when you were at Minot State and you were struggling. Go back to that time, and maybe you're sitting in your room struggling. The knowledge you know now, the human that you know now, and how dialed you in you are, go back to that time, and maybe the knowledge you know now, what's something that you could say to young Hubert Clarke?
Yeah, no, I think there would probably be a couple times, I think, where I had a really tough time. I think obviously when I lost my father, that first week was really tough. That first and only week that I kind of really, was the toughest time of losing my father, was the first week. Obviously, there's nothing to it other than, you're so down, and you hate the world, and you hate addiction, you hate everyone around you. You just want to, be alone. And so it was that week, definitely. And then I think during Minot, it was so tough with the hockey and with the people that were around and involved with the hockey at the Minotauros. I think I had a girlfriend at the time, and me and her split up. And then I think that was probably the toughest time I had during my hockey career. But then, I got through it, and that was probably about a week. Another, I've probably only had two really tough weeks my whole entire life, which is a really good feeling to say. Obviously, bad days here and there, but really tough weeks, I've probably only had 2 weeks combined. But yeah, no, during Minot, that was probably the only one super, super tough time, was when me and my ex-girlfriend broke up during the season, because it was already so tough with the season and the people that were around me. So it didn't make it any easier.
Yeah, we were just talking about relationships, and being an athlete. It's tough, man, trying to perform and show up to the rink. And most guys paint pictures on their faces, right? Put masks on and try to be a good athlete. Talk about it. So I'm very proud of you, man, because I know you don't really have mental health struggles. There is going to be a time in your life, Hubert. I'm a big believer you're going to go through adversities, and I think you have a good head on your shoulders that you know how to pick up your phone and call somebody. Yep. And I think that with you sharing your story, I know right now, because you have a lot of kids and a lot of athletes that listen to this, I know you're going to get some people that reach out to you and just thank you, because you're going to help out a lot of kids right now on just your vulnerability and your work ethic. Hey, G?
Yeah, 100%, man. And just like we talked about earlier, just the self-awareness you have already to get through shit. Yeah, I have all the confidence in you too, man, to get where you want to go. And like DJ said, even though he spoke for both of us, like, thank you, because this is what we're passionate about, is trying to like get the word out there that people have resources. You can reach out and get through shit by connecting with other people. And who is, if it's not your parents, it's someone you trust, a sibling, a friend, whoever, us, right? So yeah, just the fact that you're open to already doing that means a lot to us. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and the great story too, by the way, from Carlton there, and just how humbling that must have been for you, man, to hear someone say that, right? Without you indirectly impacted someone on that scale. So props to you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, no, even the Facebook post I made too, my Facebook has 3 million views right now. Mm-hmm. And the post by itself has 1.5 million views. Yeah. And, it really caught me off guard with how many views and, how many people actually seen it and how much support I got. But yeah, no, if whoever sees this, and if anyone ever wants to reach out to me, I obviously have Instagram and a Facebook that's really easy to reach, and I'm willing to talk to whoever needs help.
Isn't it crazy though when you step out of your comfort zone, because a lot of people either lose opportunity or don't do it because what's everyone going to think about me? I guarantee, Hubert, there's a time and right there you're like, fuck, what's everyone going to think about me if I make this post, right? But then it's powerful when you overcome that and do that, and yeah, fucking views, likes, and actually having that support, all because you stepped into your comfort zone and did it. So anyone out there, like, do it, go for it, because you never know, and the support you get, right? And that's why I loved it, man, because vulnerability and me speaking up and me surrendering pretty much saved my life, and then been sober ever since. But Hubes, man, I think we gained a brother in our after family, man. We're definitely going to be watching you moving forward, dude.
Yep.
Keep shedding light, keep working your bag off, man, and have fun with it. And if anything happens, like, you know, you got us to reach out to, and keep inspiring, man, because I know you're going to be a good candidate, maybe being a mental health speaker in my tournament here in the next couple of years, buddy. So
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for having me, boys. I really appreciate it. I had a good time.
you betcha, man. That is episode 22 on After Away From The Rink podcast. And what I've honestly heard about this, keep your head down. Have some fun with it and keep rocking and rolling. And, you know, you could use your past. You could put some fire under your belt and go for it, right? All that adversities and everything. Use that as fire and fucking go for it. Go for your dreams. We're proud of you, Hubesies. Good luck to you the rest of the future, kid. And we're definitely going to be watching. That is episode 22 After Away From The Rink podcast.
Thank you for listening to After Away From The Rink podcast. This is Gio. Just a friendly reminder that the views and opinions shared on this podcast are our own and do not necessarily reflect those of any organizations, employers, partners, or sponsors. Listener discretion is advised, as some episodes may contain discussions surrounding mental health, addiction, trauma, and other sensitive topics. If you'd like to connect with us, check out the links in our bio or send us an email at afterpodcastofficial@gmail.com. Please follow us on all major social media platforms and be sure to subscribe to After Podcast Official on YouTube and Spotify. Your support helps us reach more people and continue having these important conversations. Thank you again for your support. We appreciate every listen, every share, and every conversation. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.